I think there's
All right, so thank you for tuning in. I'm here chiming in a little bit more because I told you I was going to come back with some more information. So I'm going to quickly play this clip from the Dr. Umar Johnson debate / discussion that he had on the Daily Wrap-Up Crew on the part where he's telling the sisters, the black women in the United States, that if they marry an African man from the continent of Africa, that they cannot talk to those men the same way they talk to us over here. So in other words, you can disrespect us over here, but when you go over there, you got to have some respect. That is absolute garbage, but let's hear the clip.
obviously plenty of black men,
Yes,
black
it is.
women. So
And what I
instead of
also
saying that
tell
they'll
black
never
women,
get
if you're
married,
going to go get you an African man from the continent,
right.
you're going to have to understand that the way in which you talk to black men in America will not be tolerated over there.
Why the fuck is it
It's
tolerated
not
here?
tolerated here. That's what we're trying to tell them.
Well, over here, I want to say this to us, though. Because we try to act like the way sisters treat us doesn't have a history that we are not at least partly responsible for.
So if you've seen my other one or two videos, you know I've already played this in those, but if this is your first time seeing one of these, I'm going to still let it play. But he's basically about to make excuses for the reason that black women in the United States, if they marry an African man from the continent, that they got to talk to him with some respect. But he wants to blame us as if we deserve that disrespect, even if the woman is angry at another man for something that he did. That is absolute foolishness and madness. But let's continue. I'm going to show you about these Africans. Please stay tuned and expand your attention span. All right? We need longer attention spans today when it's an important topic. Not everything is going to get across to you in 30 or 60 seconds. So if you stick with me, you're going to see exactly why. You need to be real careful when you're giving honor to these Africans and wanting to disrespect your brothers over here that you see every day. Let's continue.
Let's be honest. The black woman has had to hold down the black house by herself, although imperfectly. She's had to do it by herself since the mass incarceration of black males began in the 1970s. You've understood?
All right, so she's had to do it because the government systematically locked up her man, according to the New Jim Crow. And you can check out that book or audio book, The New Jim Crow, and it explains how mass incarceration specifically targeted black men to lock them up for long periods of time. However, when a white man commits the same crime, he gets out of jail and gets to go to college. Whereas the brother does the same crime, the black man is labeled as a felon and can barely get a job. So that's by design. That's not our fault either. But let's continue.
Understand me. Most of our children are raised by a single mother right now. And it has been that way for about 50 years. So when a sister says, I don't need a man, because she couldn't find one strong enough to hold her down. Or when you meet a woman and you say, sister, I'm strong enough to be your man. You ain't got to work or you ain't got to pay the bills or whatever. Pull back. I got you. And she can't do it because all the other men before you who disappointed her. So what I'm saying is, black men, we got to be patient with our women because we created that personality.
So he's saying that we created the personality. So I want you to pay attention to what he said. So if you are a decent brother, you're a decent black man, let's say you got your education, you got your own business, you got a decent job, whatever, and you want to be a good husband, good provider, whatever it is, right? But the sister has been through a bad relationship. Now we understand everybody's a human being. So I'm not saying just because the sister may have some anxiety, depression, she may have a few emotional issues. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is this outright disrespect that he's saying we need to put up with, but that she can't talk like that to the men in Africa. That is insulting, and it's a damn lie. If you're so disrespectful that a black man, that an African man rather, would not want to marry you, then a so-called Negro over here shouldn't want to marry you like that either. You understand? So it's the difference between being patient with somebody who's traumatized versus dealing with outright disrespect and them treating you like you're less than a man and sometimes less than human. All right? We almost there.
We created that, and then we want to act like we didn't play a role.
We have to be held.
Hey, have you ever heard something like this before? Who
Sorry, something happened there. It's a little, let me get off this. Hold on.
wants to make $1 zillion online without having to do a single thing?
So anyway, we said we just going to get us a...
Yeah, so my apologies. Something happened there. accidentally pressed one of these buttons. The microphone fell onto the keyboard. My apologies. Give me just a moment.
No, you have to be held accountable because they have a poor selection.
Okay, so basically, what he just said is we have to be held accountable because the black woman in the United States has a poor selection. So, black man, what Dr. Umar is telling you in the United States, it's your fault that these women that are not your daughters, not your sisters, just black women you don't even know, it's your fault that they have a poor selection. Well, if she has a poor selection, she should stay single. That's her fault if she became desperate and had a baby out of wedlock by a man who was no good because she couldn't wait for sex, or she couldn't wait to have somebody just to say she's in a relationship, or for whatever social status, don't want to be called an old maid. That's nonsense. Sisters, if you're listening to this video, if you want to marry a black man and you don't see one around you that's suitable to marry, then stay single, right? Or find one from somewhere else, right? But don't have a baby by some black man who's no good, and then when he treats you like SHIT, right? Anyway, I know I said some of these words in other videos. I'm trying to clean it up a little bit, right? So if he treats you like garbage, don't blame the next man because you willingly chose that, because you didn't have to have a baby by him, especially when they got birth control pills, birth control shots. You understand? Y'all got all kind of things that men don't have. Men either have a condom or abstinence, right? So with that being said, I'm going to show y'all why this is wrong to imply that black men in the United States should have to put up with that disrespect, but yet you should respect those African men. Just a moment. All right. So now I'm going to show you a little bit about this slave trade, right? But you know what? First, before I show you about the slave trade, let me show you who we are not. All right. Now, this is old news to me. So I've been knowing this for several years now, right? Over a decade, to be honest. But there still might be some of our people, or even a lot of our people, who do not know this. So this image I have here on the page is an excerpt from the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, right? And it is the definition of Ham. So Ham is a man in the Bible, right? One of the sons of Noah on Noah's Ark. So here we go. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood, right? Because it was Noah and his wife. It was Noah's 3 sons and their 3 wives. So that's the 8 persons. You can find that in between Genesis chapter 6 through Genesis chapter 9. It's all in there. He became the progenitor. That word progenitor here that I'm hovering this mouse over means ancestor or father. So in other words, Ham became the father or ancestor, right? Or progenitor of the dark races, right? So it means dark skinned races. But look what it says next. Not the Negroes. So Negroes is dark skinned too, right? We're not Caucasian. Then it says, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. The Canaanites are the people who used to live in Israel originally before it was called Israel. It was called the land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. And if you look it up today, they will call it Southwest Asia. Sometimes they will call it the Middle East, but it's really Northeast Africa. But they dug the Suez Canal between Israel and the Middle East and Africa to try to mentally separate the two. So you think it was some white folks in Israel, but I'm telling you, the Canaanites were there, and they were what you would call African people, dark skinned. But here's my point for going here. The Bible dictionary says we don't come from Ham, which means we Negroes in the United States, by and large, there's always exceptions, right? So there might be some of us, or a few of us, or whatever, that are Africans, right? But most of us are not these Hamites. We're not descendants of Ham. That's because we come from Shem. So understand You don't have to be a so-called African to be black or dark-skinned, a dark-skinned race. So why am I going here? Let's look at the slave trade. Since Dr. Umar is telling our women over here that they have to respect the African, they got to watch their mouth if they marry a black African man over there. But you can talk any kind of way to us over here, and we supposed to be patient and put up with that nonsense? Absolute garbage. Well, we're going to see that that's a lie. Watch this here. Let's look at the slave trade. Now, this article looks like it was posted here on July 19th, 2020. So it's been up here about 3 years, right? Because today is the day I'm recording this video. It is Thursday, July 6th, 2023. The title says, "My Nigerian great-grandfather sold slaves." By the way, if you look up the word Niger in the King James Version Bible and you look up the Strong's Greek Concordance for how that word was pronounced, it was pronounced Niger, right? So they love to say Niger or Nigerian. But the so-called white man, when they pronounced that word in their language talking about us, it was pronounced nigger. That's what it was pronounced, Niger. So understand that. My Nigerian great-grandfather sold slaves. Let's see who these slaves were that they sold. Who did these Africans over there on the continent sell as slaves? Since Dr. Umar is so against us marrying the so-called white woman or the so-called white man, right? And I'm saying so-called because who they are is Romans or Europeans or Caucasoids, right? Just like they have labeled us Negroid, they label the Asians Mongoloid. Well, they are Caucasoids. They're not white, because white mean innocent, pure, and clean. And we know that's a lie, because the scripture says all have sinned. So how they going to label themselves pure and clean, as if everybody else is dirty? But let's continue. Amid the global debate about race relations, colonialism, and slavery, some of the Europeans and Americans who made their fortunes in trading human beings have seen their legacies reassessed. All right. Their statues toppled and their names removed from public business. Good. I don't feel sorry for them. We need to tear all of them down, all of these Confederate statues. But trust me, they still have plenty of Confederate statues up right now in this United States. So I do not feel sorry for them at all. But let's continue. Nigerian journalist and novelist, hope I pronounced the sister's name right, Idiobi Trisha Nwabani, writes that one of her ancestors sold slaves. You understand? This is an African sister from Nigeria. One of her ancestors sold slaves. So that means it's an African man. A black-skinned or dark-skinned African sold your behind in slavery, black woman. And I'm saying black woman, not because he didn't sell black men too. But see, we not trying to say that we should respect sisters on the African continent and then disrespect our sisters over here. But Dr. Umar telling you that if you marry a man from the African continent, you got to watch your mouth. But over here, we got to put up with your BS. And I'm telling you, we don't. But if you want to take that route, I'm going to see if you feel like that after you read this article, right? Or after I read it to you, right? But argues that he should not be judged by today's standards or values. So you got an African sister over there trying to make excuse for her slave-holding father, who was a black African. And I'm saying black because of his skin complexion. Black is not a nationality. I'm just trying to remind you who it is that enslaved your behind. So why are you over here hating on Billy and Becky and Dr. Umar talking about snow bunnies and snow puppies? What about these black Africans that sold your ass into slavery? You okay with slavery as long as the slave master is black? I'm against all slave masters. I don't give a damn if they black or so-called white. Because the scriptures say they should be put to death in the Old Testament. Matter of fact, let's get that. Just a moment. Just a moment. All right. So we are here in the King James Bible, Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, that's called slave trading. Or if he be found in his hand, right, he shall surely be put to death. You understand? So according to the Bible in the Old Testament, slave traders, whether you the one that sold the man or the woman, see, this one you need common sense, by the way. When it says stealeth a man, it means man or woman, as in mankind. If it's wrong to slave trade men, it's also wrong to slave trade women. All right? So he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand. If you sold him to somebody else, you should be put to death. If he's been found in your hand, you should be put to death. That's what it's saying. Now, does that rule from Exodus change because the slave master is an African? See, you got a black woman, quote unquote, an African woman, trying to make excuses for her great-grandfather. She says, my great-grandfather, Nwabani Ogogo Oriaku, if I pronounced that right, was what I prefer to call a businessman. Oh, she trying to say he was a businessman. You see that? It sounds just like these Caucasoids over here. The same way this so-called white man and woman try to justify enslaving your ass and making you into human cargo, treating you like a thing instead of a person or instead of a human or a living soul. She's making the same excuse. A businessman? Well, that businessman should have been put to death according to the scripture. But let's continue. From the Igbo ethnic group, I know it looks like Igbo, but it's pronounced Igbo, right? Ethnic group of southeastern Nigeria. He dealt in a number of goods, including tobacco and palm produce. He also sold human beings. You can't make this up. He had agents who captured slaves from different places and brought them to him. My father told me. She said it's her great-grandfather. Now I'm going to put this in perspective for you. I talked to my great-grandfather face-to-face many times when I was a teenager. So since this is her great-grandfather, that means this slavery is recent. You understand? This is recent. Then it says, Nwabani Ogogo slaves were sold through the ports of Calabar and Bonny in the south of what is today known as Nigeria. People from ethnic groups along the coast, such as the Efik and the Ijaw, usually acted as stevedores. Not sure what that word means. I have to look it up. But on the context, basically they acting as an agent, right, of some sort. Just going by context clues. For the white merchants. So they were acting as stevedores for the white merchants and as middlemen for Igbo traders. So there you go. A middleman is an agent, somebody that's helping you sell, buy and sell the slaves. Like my great-grandfather. That's what this sister is saying. If I can call her that. She ain't really no sister of mine if she's trying to justify the fact that her great-grandfather enslaved us. What she need to be doing is apologizing and saying that it's wrong, but it's good that we're not doing it anymore. That's what she's supposed to be saying. Let's continue. They loaded and offloaded ships and supplied the foreigners with food and other provisions. They negotiated prices for slaves from the hinterlands, then collected royalties from both the sellers and the buyers. Right? Let's go back to the Bible. They buying and selling. They stealing you because you didn't ask, you didn't volunteer to go. Stealing a man is called kidnapping today. So they kidnapped you, forced you into slavery, and sold you. That means these Africans should have been put to death. So the great-granddaughter of one of these Africans who the Most High said in the Old Testament should have been put to death, which means today they would at least be locked up in prison for life, right? Because they get a little mercy and grace in this New Testament. She's making excuses for them. So you can take your ass over there and want to respect the African man on the continent while you disrespecting your Negro brothers over here, who are actually from Shem, the Israelites. Some of us might be Africans, but you get the point. We're not exactly the same bloodline as these people, though we are related, right? Let's keep going. I'm going to look at this. So this image here, I'm going to read under that. Several European nations had slave compounds in what is now Nigeria. You can't make this up. European nations mean the so-called white man. He had slave compounds in what is now Nigeria. So Nigeria was big in the slave trade. About 1.5 million Igbo slaves were shipped across the Atlantic Ocean between the 15th and 19th centuries. In other words, from the 1400s to the 1800s. more than 1.5 million Africans, so-called Africans, because they were really Israelites, and they might have had a few Africans with them. You had these Hamites that were selling Shemites, selling Negroes, remember? I'm going to keep bringing that up so you can remember that we're not the same people. The Negroes and these Africans, Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites are not the same people. Now let's continue. But I'm calling them Africans sometimes because that's what Dr. Umar says. So that's why that Pan-Africanism is not really the truth. Just because you was on the continent of Africa does not mean you the same people. Charlize Theron and other Caucasian people live in South Africa, right? And they're what he would call a snow bunny or a snow puppy. But they're literally from South Africa. So I'm telling you, just because you're on the continent of Africa don't mean you the same people. And it don't matter if your skin is dark, you still not the same people. Even if the so-called white man calls you all black or African. I don't care what my oppressor calls me. I am who my creator says I am, or what history proves that I am. Not what somebody today just tells me I am. Let's continue. We have the right to self-identify. Now it says more than 1.5 million Africans were shipped to what was then called the New World, the Americas with a S, because a whole lot of slavery went on in Central and South America, not just North America where we at in the United States. Through the Calabar port in the Bight of Bonny, making it one of the largest points of exit during the transatlantic trade. So we got this little map here, the transatlantic slave trade. Captives taken from Africa to the Americas and Europe from the 16th to the 19th century. And as you can see, these ports, right, from Africa going across the Atlantic Ocean. But I want you to know that these Nigerians and other Africans like the ones in Ghana, right, they traded our ass and sold us to this damn so-called white man. So I'm trying to see why Dr. Umar is giving our sisters permission to disrespect us, but saying she's going to have to honor these men over here as if they're some kind of righteous saints. No, they sold us into slavery just like this damn white man that he complains about. So what's the difference between marrying them and a snow puppy or a snow bunny? What's the difference? Oh, you like one slave master because they got black or dark skin, but the slave master with the vanilla skin, now that's a problem. That's psychotic. That's stupid. I hate all slave masters. Understand that. All of them. If you believe that my people should be enslaved and that it was okay, that it was nothing wrong with it, then you're my enemy. I don't give a damn what skin tone you are. Believe that. Now let's continue. Slaves recaptured and brought back to Africa. Boundaries as of 1750 shown. Okay, so they may have had some of that going on as well. All right, let's scroll on down. Watch this here. Now, this is the sister that's writing this article. It says the only life they knew. She making excuses for it. Watch this. Nwabani Ogogo lived in a time when the fittest survived and the bravest excelled. So she's saying back then it was survival of the fittest, right? The concept of all men are created equal was completely alien to traditional religion and law in his society. Well, that's his damn problem. That's your great-grandfather's problem, not ours, because the Bible existed before then. And it told you that if you steal a people and sell them across the Atlantic Ocean, you should be put to death, because that's kidnapping, that's slave trading. And the New Testament is against slave trading also, for the people that lie and pretend the Bible is okay with our people being snatched from one continent and sold to another. No, it is not. The Old and the New Testament is against it. But I'm just showing you the Old Testament because that's good enough for me, right? If you want to see it in the New Testament, I might put that in another video because I'm trying to stick with this article. So she making excuses for this devil, right? You ain't got to have light or white skin, so-called, to be a devil. Now we got a black African devil, because devil or Satan is just another word for enemy or adversary. It don't always mean some spirit floating around in the sky or somewhere underground. It basically means enemy. So if somebody kidnaps you and sells you to another people for the rest of your life, would you not call that your enemy? And if they got blacks or dark skin like her and her great grandfather, are you going to say, oh, it's okay that you sold me in slavery since you're black? Hell no. You still my enemy. So you black women can take your ass over there and try to respect these Africans if you want to, while disrespecting so-called Negroes here. But you wait till I show you the rest of this article. You can take your chances if you want. They ass might put you back in slavery. Believe that. Assessing the people of Africa's past by today's standards would compel us to cast the majority of our heroes as villains. What she's saying is, if you require these African men to not be slave traders and look at human beings as humans, as equal living souls, you're going to find out they were all villains. In other words, that's how many of them was taking part in the slave trade. This is why I'm done with all this skin color crap. You understand? You need to look at what people have done. Because you got these Negroes acting like because somebody is black, quote unquote, or African, that means they're your friend. No, that does not. As some of us say, all our skin folk is not our kinfolk. Just because somebody look like you don't mean they won't chain your ass up and sell you into slavery. And so this is her, Adeobi Tricia Nwabani, Nigerian journalist, making excuses for her great-grandfather's enslavement of our people. So you can take your ass over there and honor these men if you want, but just know that he enslaved you just like Billy and Brad's ancestors did. Now what you gonna do? See? You better learn to respect your man over here who was sold over here into slavery with you so that we can do better for ourselves as much as possible, even though things is not perfect. But let's continue. It would be unfair, this is what she said, it would be unfair to judge a 19th century man by 21st century principles. Yeah, we're going to check and see if that's true as well. Assessing the people of Africa's past by today's standards would compel us to cast the majority of our heroes as villains, denying us the right to fully celebrate anyone who was not influenced by Western ideology. She's making the same excuses as these Confederates. Well, the Confederate flag doesn't represent slavery. It's about heritage and history. They want to honor their Confederate slave-holding devils, right? Well, she wants to honor her great-grandfather who was a black African slave-holding devil. See? I'm equal opportunity. I'm going to judge people by what they do, not the color of their skin. Because you had some Caucasians who were abolitionists, who were actually against slavery. See? I'm going to hate them and I'm going to love these Africans who sold me? Hell no. If you tried to help my people get out of slavery, then you my friend, even if you're a Caucasian or a European or whatever. And if you are a black African, I don't care if you blue black, or I don't care if you look exactly like me. If your ass is trying to make excuses for enslaving me and or my people, you are not my friend, you are my enemy. Damn right. Now let's continue. Igbo slave traders like my great-grandfather did not suffer any crisis of social acceptance or legality. They did not need any religious or scientific justifications for their actions. Yes, they did. I just showed you in the Bible that he should have been put to death, but let's continue. They were simply living the life into which they were raised. Now, I don't know what religion these Africans was following. I really don't give a damn, because you shouldn't need a book to tell you not to steal a man or a woman, kidnap them, and sell them overseas against their will. You should know that shit is wrong if you have a conscience, right? People do what they can get away with. That's what's going on. But if we had our own army then and we rose up and killed their asses, I bet you they would have understood the moral wrong of their actions then. Right. That was all they knew. And that's another damn excuse. I don't care. So what if the so-called white man in the Confederate said that slavery was all he knew? That was all they knew to enslave us so they could make a living off our slavery. See, I'm showing y'all this because while Dr. Umar talking about snow bunnies and snow puppies, he's sending you to love another slave master just because they're black. So I'm telling you, whether they black, white, or in between, damn it, whatever the color of their skin, if they enslaved your ass, and their descendants are here now trying to justify what they did instead of apologizing and trying to make it right, You see? Or at least acknowledging that it was wrong, then they're your enemies too. Slaves buried alive. The most popular story I've heard about my great-grandfather was how he successfully confronted officials of the British colonial government after they seized some of his slaves. My great-grandfather apparently did not consider it fair that his slaves had been seized. Do y'all see that? He wants his slaves back. And again, this is the sister writing that. Let me go back so you can see her picture again. The woman that's saying all of these excuses and trying to sugarcoat the slavery of her Nigerian great-grandfather and thus her Nigerian people, this is her. This is not Becky. It's not Amber. You understand? It's not Jennifer Aniston. It's not Angelina Jolie. Who else is some famous white women? You get the point. It's not Amy Robach, the lady that the TJ guy on the news anchor, who had an affair with her. Well, she was married too, so they both had an affair and they got fired. It's not her saying this. This is an African woman making excuses for some damn slavery of our people. So you tell me if these Africans is your friend. Let's continue. Yeah. We'll go on down. The slaves were being transported by middlemen, along with a consignment of tobacco and palm produce from Nwabani Ogogo's hometown of Umuahia to the coast. And again, I'm trying to say these African words properly, right? My great-grandfather apparently did not consider it fair that his slaves had been seized. Okay, we'll skip some of it. Well, we'll read this. Buying and selling of human beings among the Igbo had been going on long before the Europeans arrived. Remember this. Buying and the selling of human beings among the Igbo, in other words, these Africans, had been going on long before the Europeans arrived. Facts. So again, this is why I'm talking so strong. You can take your ass to Africa and try to respect the African man if you want, but you better make sure that he's not the type of African that believes you should still be a slave. So, miss me and miss all the black men in the United States with your disrespectful big mouth, black woman. And I'm not talking to all of you, because there are some sisters who may actually try to humble themselves down and talk to us like human beings. I'm talking to those of you who going to listen to Dr. Umar and you're going to be his cheerleading squad because now you think you got an excuse to tell us that we ain't nothing, that we're lowlives, that you can talk to us any kind of way. Go on, take your ass over there to Africa. And you better make sure that you don't end up getting slave trafficked today in the sex trade. Oh, don't get it twisted. It's some slavery going on right now in this world. So you better be real careful. Now it says people became slaves as punishment for crime. That sound familiar? The 13th Amendment says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall be allowed in this United States except as punishment for a crime. And that's why right after slavery here, they started making up the Christian black codes. And after that, Jim Crow, and they made damn near everything that a black man did into a crime so they could put him back in slavery. Let's continue. Payment for debts or prisoners of war. The successful sale of adults was considered an exploit for which a man was hailed by praise singers. Oh, they sang a song when they enslaved our ass and sold us. Look at that. They celebrated, akin to exploits in wrestling, war, or in hunting animals like the lion. Igbo slaves served as domestic servants and laborers. They were sometimes also sacrificed in religious ceremonies and buried alive with their masters to attend to them in the next world. Do you see this shit? Wow. This is the Africa that our black women from the United States supposed to go back and honor? You're telling her to go honor a people that'll have a religious sacrificial ceremony. That means they will cut your ass up and bleed you out and then bury you with your black African slave master so that they can attend to you in the next world. You can't make this stuff up. That did not work for the Egyptians. When the black Egyptian pharaohs, when they were buried in the pyramids and they put all their gold and silver and jewelry in the tomb with them, guess what happened? The gold, silver, and money didn't go with them to the afterlife. It was right there in the tomb when these tomb raiders came in, when the so-called white man took all the jewelry and put it in the damn museum. So that shows you that the Egyptian/African religion is fake. But the Bible says your body is going to return to the ground from which it came, and your spirit returns to God who gave it. You come in this world naked and you're going to leave naked. The only thing that's leaving here with you is your spirit and the works that you did, whether they be good or whether they be evil. Facts. So that so-called African spirituality from Egypt is obviously false, because if it was true, how did the so-called white man go and steal all the money from these Egyptian mummified tombs? Why was his body still mummified with the gold and silver in the casket or tomb with him? He didn't take it to the afterlife, did he? But you Negroes want to go back into African spirituality, praying to your dead ancestors. Yes, your ancestors are with you in your DNA, but they're not coming back to this earth when you conjuring them up from trees and grass and shiznit. But if that's your faith, that's on you. But I'm showing you that the Egyptian religion, which is the African religion, is false, because they thought they could take the gold and silver with them, but you see the gold and silver still right here, and the white man stole it from the tombs in the pyramid. You can't make this up. So the Bible must be correct when it says you can't take material wealth with you into the next life. So you better take some good works with you. And good works, black woman, who's really a Moor and or Israelite, because some of you might be Moors, meaning just Africans, and some of you might be Israelites as well. Right? So the good works you can take with you into the next life will be showing some respect to your husband, showing some respect to the father of your child or children, and actually allowing him a chance to be a father or a husband or a leader, without telling him he ain't shit, and that you gonna just put the court on him, put the legal system on him, and treat him like dirt. That's evil. Let's continue. Slavery was so ingrained in the culture that a number of popular Igbo proverbs make reference to it. See, the African people, they over there, they loved slavery. They loved enslaving Negroes, which is us, is what I'm telling you. Anyone who has no slave is his own slave. That was one of the African proverbs. I bet you ain't heard Dr. Umar quoting this proverb, have you? Right. Next, a slave who looks on while a fellow slave is tied up and thrown into the grave with his master should realize that the same thing could be done to him someday. Wow. It is when the son is being given advice that the slave learns. So, anyway, then it says the arrival of European merchants offering guns, mirrors, gin, and other exotic goods in exchange for humans massively increased demand, leading people to kidnap others and sell them. See, just for some guns, mirrors, gin, and other exotic goods. That's what your African brothers and sisters did to you, black woman. And for any brothers listening, it did to you also, black man. So this is why Dr. Umar don't know what the hell he talking about. So you black women in the United States, you better respect your Negro men over here in this country. Because you take your ass back to Africa, you're going to find out something. Because if this woman that wrote this article is still making excuses for her great-grandfather, what do you think might secretly be in some of their hearts to this day? She making excuses in 2020. That's when she wrote this article. She ain't no better than the damn Confederates over here, Robert E. Lee, the general of the Confederate Army. Her heart is the same way. How slaves were traded in Africa. So I'm going to try to go ahead and finish out this video so it won't be too long. But I appreciate your patience if you're still here with me. And you see why it's taking a while, because I wanted to dig in a little bit and show you. Right? So, European buyers tended to remain on the coast. African sellers, meaning slave traders, brought slaves from the interior on foot. So in other words, Africans brought Negroes to the coast and then handed them over to the Europeans, who then put us on ships and brought us to this United States. Now you tell me which one of them is your friend and which one is your enemy. Is it just Becky and Brad that's your enemy because they got white skin? Or are these black ass Africans your enemies as well? I'm telling you, both of them is your enemy. So I don't give a damn about their color. I care about what they did to my people. Facts. See, that's what's wrong with some people. I don't hear nothing about no damn snow puppies and snow bunnies. When you telling our black women to disrespect us and it's okay, we got to live with it or be patient with it, but over there you got to watch your mouth. Watch your mouth with a damn slave trader. You need to be talking crazy to them. Let's continue. Journeys could be as long as 300 miles. Damn. They put us in slavery on foot, made us walk as long as 300 miles. That's what they did to our ancestors. 2 captives were typically chained together at the ankle. Damn, that makes the journey even harder. Columns of captives were tied together by ropes around their necks. 10% to 15% of captives died on the way. I guess so. And the source for that is the Encyclopedia Britannica. And let's see, resisting abolition. This is the part I want to finish with, yeah. Resisting abolition. In other words, the African people don't want the slavery to stop. Let's go. The trade in African people continued until 1888, when Brazil became the last country in the Western Hemisphere to abolish it. So yeah, the United States actually abolished slavery before Brazil. Go figure. Y'all so angry about the slavery that happened up here, but Brazil had slavery longer than the United States. Let's continue. We think this trade must go on. That is the verdict of our oracle and our priest, King of Boni, 19th century. Boni is that place in Africa. This is what one of the African priests and kings said. It's crazy. When the British extended their rule to southeastern Nigeria in the late 19th century and early 20th century, the 20th century is the 1900s. Now you're going to see. They began to enforce abolition through military action. Look, the British. He's a so-called white man. Y'all know it's some of our folks live in Britain too. I'm not crazy. Not everybody that's black or African lives on the continent of Africa. But you do know that Britain is where a whole lot of these Europeans were at. So the British had to extend their rule to southeastern Nigeria in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. That means the 1900s. And you know what they was doing? The white man began to enforce abolition, meaning the abolition of slavery, to abolish or stop slavery. Not those black Africans. Through military action, the British white man had to use his military to fight to make these black ass Africans stop slave trading our people. And Dr. Umar telling our sister she got to respect those men over there more than she respect us over here. You got to be out your damn mind. Let's continue. But by using force rather than persuasion, many local people such as my great-grandfather may not have understood that abolition was about the dignity of humankind and not a mere change in economic policy that affected demand and supply. Look at the mindset of her great-grandfather with his African ass. He didn't understand that abolishing slavery was about the dignity of humankind. He just thought somebody was messing up his money. Y'all taking my slaves, I'm losing money. That's all his evil ass thought. Wow. That's the African man thinking like that. I don't give a damn his skin color look like ours or darker. That's our enemy. Let's continue. We think this trade must go on. One local king in Boni infamously said in the 19th century. Okay, we read that in the picture up there. They just repeating it. That is the verdict of our oracle and our priest. They say that your country, however great, can never stop a trade ordained by God. You might as well be worshiping white Jesus again, because your Africans said this slave trade is ordained by God. That means they want to keep your ass in slavery forever, even after the British man was trying to get you out of it. You can't make this up. So the Europeans wanted to let you out of slavery before the African. So now go talk to somebody about a damn snow bunny or a snow puppy. You're going to sound dumb as hell when you telling them to go over here and honor the Africans, and the Africans enslaved your ass before the Europeans got there and tried to keep doing it after the Europeans was finished. Damn. You tell me who my worst enemy is. Let's continue. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not absolving these Caucasoids, these Europeans. They was evil and wicked as hell for their slavery. Understand that they were definitely, and a lot of them still are our enemies because they still agree with their evil ancestors. However, I'm not giving these Africans a pass either. That's my point. Whether the slave trade is black or white, his ass should be put to death according to the Bible. Let's continue. As far as my great-grandfather was concerned, he had a bona fide trading license from the Royal Niger Company. And again, who is this lady talking? Let me scroll up. I know I did it before, but just in case you skipped through this video, when this person in this article is saying my great-grandfather, it's this woman right here that's talking. This African woman's great-grandfather, her name is Adeobi Trisha Nwabani, the Nigerian journalist. She's making excuses and trying to justify the fact that her black African-ass great-grandfather was enslaving Negroes and trying to say that was just his way of life. So she and him is no different than these damn Caucasoid European Confederate lovers in the United States. But Dr. Umar telling our women, make sure you don't disrespect the African men on the continent with your big mouth. But these brothers going to have to put up with it a little bit since they not perfect. Man, get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here with that BS. Now let's get back down here. Watch this here. As my great-grandfather, as far as that sister I just showed you, her great-grandfather was concerned, he had a bona fide trading license from the Royal Niger Company. And again, in the ancient Greek, that's pronounced Niger, like nigger. That's what it's pronounced like. A British company that administered commerce in the region in the last quarter of the 19th century. So when his property was seized, meaning his slaves, an aggrieved Nwabani Ogogo boldly went to see the colonial officers responsible and presented them with his license. They released his goods and his slaves. Damn, he fighting to keep slavery going. The white people apologized to him, my father said. He made white folks apologize for trying to free Africans from slavery. You can't make this stuff up. So this is the African woman's father. The author of this article, this is her father. And the man she's discussing in the article is her great-grandfather. So only 2 generations before this man. That's how recent this is. Now watch this. Slave trade in the 20th century. Oh yeah. You thought Africa was so much better, huh? Acclaimed Igbo historian Adiele Afibo, maybe that's how you say it, described the slave trade in southeastern Nigeria, which lasted until the late 1940s and early 1950s. In other words, these Africans were still enslaving your ass when Dr. King was getting started doing his work. Damn, the early 1950s, our people was having the civil rights movement and these Africans were still trying to enslave your black ass. I'm saying it like that so you can get the point. What the hell you mean? Respect those men over there and watch your mouth to the black woman, but she can talk to us any kind of damn way. Okay, go on, take your ass over there. You better hope they don't reinstate the slave trade in 2023. Then you're going to wish you was over here with these Negroes that you love to disrespect. Let's continue. Watch this here. As one of the best kept secrets of the British colonial administration. See, this is a secret. A lot of folks don't know that. While the international trade ended, the local trade continued. So in other words, the so-called white man was no longer slave trading people in the 1940s and 50s. He still wasn't holy. He wasn't perfect. But at least we weren't literally on the damn plantation. Right? While the international trade ended, the local trade in Africa continued. That's the point of me reading this article. the government was aware of the fact that the coastal chiefs and the major coastal traders had continued to buy slaves from the interior. The coastal chiefs mean these African chiefs, right? Wrote Afibo in The Abolition of the Slave Trade in Southern Nigeria, 1885 to 1950. Damn, that's only 73 years ago. Our people was over here fighting in the streets for civil rights at that time. I wish we had been fighting for human rights, but at least we was fighting for civil rights. You know, and that's before my time and probably before many of your time on here. But you see the point. So whenever you see some black and white videos with Malcolm X or Dr. King, just know that just before those men got started with their work in trying to liberate us here from the Jim Crow segregation, know that these Africans literally would have still had you in slavery. Now, he added that the British tolerated the ongoing trade on political and economic grounds. So the British tolerated these Africans still enslaving these Negroes. Let's see, British traders were at the heart of the slave trade before the UK government abolished the trade. So again, the British are not innocent, right? I'm not saying that this so-called white man is not evil as well, because he was evil, right, when he did this. But he stopped before the Africans did. So what's these African chiefs' excuse? They don't have one. So they can shut the hell up. They needed the slave trading chiefs for effective local governance and for the expansion and growth of legitimate trade. Sometimes they also turned a blind eye rather than jeopardize a useful alliance, as seems to have been the case when they returned Nwabani Ogogo's slaves. So anyway, here you go. That is the point. And, this article got some more information in it, but I wanted to at least read that part, right? So you can see that these Africans, such as the sister whose picture I showed you a few times now, Adeobi Trisha Nwabani, is making excuses for her great-grandfather who still would have had your ass in slavery forever, basically, if it was up to him. If it was up to people like him, you would be in slavery in 2023 in Africa. So I guess you would talk differently to those African men, because if you didn't, they could tie you to a whipping post and beat your ass, right? Just like so-called Massa Epps on 12 Years a Slave did Patsy. Can't make this stuff up. I'm going to read this last thing. It's other stuff in here, but this is the last thing I'm going to read. She says, my great-grandfather is renowned for his business prowess, strong leadership, immense contribution to society. Wow. He made a great contribution to society, and he's a strong leader. You see how she's showing him respect, even though he enslaved other black people or Negroes? But our sisters think they can disrespect us just because we don't have as much of this monopoly money that the Federal Reserve has printed up and given to these white real estate developers, right? Because they didn't work for the money, and the money is not real, but that's another subject. It has no intrinsic value. It's only legal tender. Can't make this stuff up. To society, look, and the advancement of Christianity. Dr. Umar, I thought the African spirituality and what the Africans were doing was so much better religious-wise. He over there advancing Christianity and enslaving Negroes. So it seemed like these black African people, they have the white Jesus complex as well. And that's the real problem. Our people ain't got no damn snow bunny crisis or snow puppy crisis. What they have is the white Jesus crisis, because they believe that Jesus is so-called white when in fact he was a so-called Negro when he was here in the flesh. Facts. So with that, I hope this has educated you or edified you in some way. And I hope you can appreciate so-called black man and black woman in the United States, that we need to respect and love each other right here. and do right by each other right here. Yes, brothers should love and protect and provide for their women and children. And that's why the woman needs to honor that brother, needs to show respect to that brother. Don't put the man down. You're supposed to be trying to help build him up. You're supposed to want him to win. You're not supposed to look for every opportunity so you can say, see, I knew he wasn't going to be nothing. He ain't nothing. I'm going to just get these stamps. I'm going to put the folks on him. So he'll just pay me and I'm going to just take my child. Dumb as hell. Don't do that. Do not do that, or else, hey, some of these brothers are going to get with the so-called white woman or an Asian woman or maybe another sister, right, who is a so-called African woman or whatever from somewhere else. But why should they have to do that when it's beautiful sisters here if they can only get along with them? Have a good day.